Chapter 19, The Boniface Estate. Mrs. Frisby said, "Jonathan and Mr. Aegis got the screen open." "Yes," Nicodemus said, "and without them I doubt that we could have done it. The steel frame was strong, the bolt was secure, and the wire so stiff we could not have bent it enough for one of us to go through. So we were glad they were with us and asked them if they would, after all, like to stay with us. Since there were only 2 of them, they said they would, for the time being at least." And now began a journey that was to last, with some interruptions, for almost 2 years. Part of it were pleasant. It was a joyful feeling at first just to be free again and to get those laboratory collars off, and parts of it were terrible. I have made notes about it all, and if the time ever comes when rats publish books of their own, I intend to write a book about it. It would be a long book, full of trouble and danger, too much to tell now. It was in one of those dangerous times that I lost my eye and got the scar that you see on my face. But we did have some happy times and some pieces of great good luck, 2 in particular, that helped to explain how we got here and what our plans are now. It was early summer when we got out. We had known that beforehand. We could tell by the lateness of the light through the windows, though it was dark when we finally stood on the roof. We had no trouble getting down the side of the building, however. There were downspouts in the corners with plenty of toe holds. We dropped the screwdriver and the spool of thread into one of these. A little lower, there was ivy. We were all good climbers, and there was moonlight to see by. In less than 15 minutes we were on the ground, staying in the darkest shadows under the bushes when we could. We sped away from NIMH, not knowing or caring at first what direction we were going. Nobody saw us. During the next few weeks we lived as we could. We had, in a way, to learn all over again how to get along, for although the world outside the laboratory was the same, we ourselves were different. We were a couple of times reduced to eating from dumps and garbage cans, but knowing how to read, we quickly learned to recognize signs on buildings. Groceries, supermarket, meats and vegetables, for instance, let us know that there was food inside for the taking. And once inside a supermarket at night, they always leave a few lights on. We could even read the signs on the wall directing us to Section 8 for dairy products, cheese, Section 3 for baked goods, and so on. In the country there were barns and silos stocked with grain and corn, and chicken houses full of eggs. Occasionally we came upon other rats, and a few times we talked with them, but not for long, because after just a few words they would begin to look at us strangely and edge away. Somehow I think they could tell that we were different. I think we even looked different. Either the diet or the injections at NIMH made us bigger and stronger than other rats. And all the strange rats we saw looked to us surprisingly weak and puny. So we were set apart from even our own kind. It was while we were in the country that we had our first important stroke of luck. We had just about decided, after nearly 4 months of freedom and constant roving, to find a place to settle down, if not permanently, at least for the winter. We thought that it should be in the country, but not too far from a town, so that we would have access to grocery stores as well as barns and gardens. It was about this time, too, that I began to wonder and worry somewhat about the fact that whatever we are, and whatever we ate, whatever we needed, must always be stolen. Rats had always lived this way, and yet, why? I talked to some of the others about this. It was the beginning of the discontent, and an idea that kept growing, although slowly. The season was autumn. We were walking one evening down a winding country road. We never walked really on the road, but along the edge, so that we could vanish into the bushes or a ditch if anyone came along. You can imagine that 20 rats and 2 mice traveling in procession would cause some comment, and we didn't want that. As we walked, we reached a very high fence of wrought iron, the kind that looks like a row of black iron spears fastened together with pointed tops. An expensive fence surrounding a large estate with a big, expensive-looking house in the middle, and well-kept grounds and gardens. We walked along past this fence until we reached a gate. "There's nobody living here," said Justin. "How do you know?" The gate's padlocked, and look, dead weeds standing outside of it, not even bent. Nobody's driven in here for a while." The house had looked quiet, a deserted look, and there was a mailbox in front hanging open, empty. "I wonder if we could get in," Jenner said. "Why should we? It's a big place. It would have a big pantry, big cupboard, big freezer, if it's as empty as it looks." We turned into the grounds, moving cautiously, and from beneath some bushes we watched the windows. As dusk fell, lights came on in several of them, both upstairs and down. Jenner said, "That's supposed to make us think there's someone there." "Yes," said Justin, "but there isn't. I could see one of the lamps when it came on. There was nobody near it, and they all came on at the same time. Automatic switches to keep burglars away." "Well, they're not keeping me away," said Justin. He ran in the house, climbed to one of the windowsills, and looked in. He tried another, then he came back. "Nobody," he said. So we went in. We found a small window in the back with a cracked pane, knocked out one corner of the glass, and climbed through. At first, we planned just to look for food. We found it, too, enough to last us for a year or more. As Jenner had predicted, there was a big freezer, well stocked, bread, meat, vegetables, everything, and a whole room full of shelves covered with canned food. The cans baffled us at first, as they had in the grocery stores. We could read what was in them, but we couldn't get it out. Then Arthur found a machine on the kitchen counter. He read the instructions on the side of it. Slide can under cutter and press switch. We tried it. The cans turned slowly around in the machine, and when we pulled it out, the top had been cut free. I'll always remember what was in that first can. Clam chowder. Delicious. After we had eaten, we wandered around the house. It was a rich man's mansion, with beautiful furniture and fine rugs and carpeting on the floor. There was a crystal chandelier in the dining room and a big stone fireplace in the living room. But the greatest treasure of all, for us, was in the study. This was a large rectangular room with walnut paneling, a walnut desk, leather chairs, and walls lined to the ceiling with books. Thousands of books about every subject you could think of. There were shelves of paperbacks. There were encyclopedias, histories, novels, philosophies, and textbooks of physics, chemistries, electrical engineers, and others, more than I can name. Luckily, there was even one of those small ladders on wheels they use in some libraries to get to the top shelves. Well, we fell on those books with even more appetite than on the food, and in the end, we moved into the house and stayed all winter. We could do that, it turned out, without much fear of discovery. We learned that from some newspaper cuttings I found on the desk in the study. They were about a wedding, and most of them showed pictures of a newly married couple leaving a house to begin their honeymoon. The groom was a Mr. Gordon Boniface, heir to the Gould Stetson fortune, and the house they were leaving was the house we were in. According to the clippings, they were going on a trip all the way around the world. They were coming back to the Boniface estate in May. Until then, it was our estate. Oh, there was a caretaker gardener who came 3 times a week, and once in a while he would check the house in a cursory sort of way. That is, he would unlock the front door, glance around to see that everything looked all right, then lock it and leave. But he didn't live there. He lived in a small house down the road, and we were expecting him when he came. He had figured out, from the way the place was kept up, the lawns mowed, raked, leaves, gardens weeded and watered, that there had to be somebody working on it. So we posted a watch, saw him coming, and kept watching him all the time he was there. And we made sure, when he looked in the house, that everything did look all right. This involved a certain amount of work. We had to haul all our empty tin cans and other trash at night out into a hidden place in the woods, quite far from the house. We cleaned up after ourselves carefully. We learned to use the water taps and the dusting cloths we found in the kitchen closet. If the caretaker had looked more closely, in fact, he would have seen that the kitchen counters were somewhat shinier than they should have been in an empty house. But he didn't. He never even noticed the small corner of glass missing from the back window. And all winter, far into the night, we read books and we practiced writing.